Our first story is about a beluga whale who may have been a Russian spy. In 2019, the whale in question was discovered off of Norway's Arctic coast wearing a harness that had on it the words Equipment St. Petersburg and had a mount for a small camera. This sparked theories that the whale may have been trained by the Russian military. Russia has been known in the past to train both dolphins and to a lesser extent whales for military purposes. To be fair, this is not exclusive to Russia. Other militaries, such as the American military, has trained cetaceans in the past. But anyways, the whale was nicknamed Hvaldimir from the Norwegian word for whale, Hval, combined with the first name of Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia. To be fair, we don't know for sure that Hvaldimir was a spy. There's another theory that he could have been a lost therapy whale, which I guess is a thing. Whether or not Hvaldimir is a Russian spy, it's clear that he used to belong to captivity. For instance, he appeared to be more comfortable around humans than most other beluga whales. He appeared to ask humans for food. He played fetched. He was able to come when called. Whale trainers even found that he responded to hand gestures, indicating that he must have received prior training. And also the harness that he was wearing that said Equipment St. Petersburg. That's a big one. Of course, because Hvaldimir was so friendly, tourists began to flock towards him, which provided its own dangers to Hvaldimir, but it did provide a number of interesting interactions with people. One tourist and a friend visiting Hammerfest, where Hvaldimir was at the time, went to the dock to look for Hvaldimir, when one of them accidentally dropped their phone in the water, only for it to be retrieved by Hvaldimir. That was probably pretty awesome. On another occasion, I guess Hvaldimir approached some divers, and he pulled one of the divers' knives out of its scabbard. I guess the scabbard had a lock on it too that you needed to disengage with your thumb. So I don't know how the whale got the knife. I guess it's used its tongue. But yeah, Hvaldimir got the knife. He backed away and just sat there, staring at them. The whale has a knife! Everybody swim! Anyways, it was pretty clear that Hvaldimir was at pretty great risk because he was presumably formerly a captive whale. He would have had a harder time surviving in the wild. And so many charitable organizations took it upon themselves to look after Vhaldimir's welfare and to track his movements. There was even an organization formed specifically to look after Hvaldimir called One Whale. Essentially, there were plans in the works to transport Hvaldimir further north to the Arctic, where he could live with other beluga whales. After all, beluga whales rarely live as far south as the area around the coast of Norway and Sweden where Hvaldimir was living. I think they were only weeks away from transporting him, which makes the next bit of news sad and kind of ironic. Sadly, in late August, Hvaldimir was found dead. And his death was very strange. Initially, two organizations, One Whale and NOAA, another Norwegian animal rights organization, filed a complaint with the Norwegian police saying Hvaldimir had been shot by a gun, which is crazy. And these organizations were pretty confident at the time that Hvaldimir had been killed by gunshot wounds. Here's a quote from Regina Haug, the founder of One Whale. I have been with Hvaldimir for the past 5 years and know him very well. When I saw his body and the multiple injuries, I immediately knew he had been killed by gunshots. I even saw a bullet lodged in his body. There's no question that this kind, gentle animal was senselessly murdered. We will pursue justice for Hvaldimir and hope that someone comes forward with information about his killing. So it did appear for a moment that Hvaldimir was undeniably killed intentionally. You mean to tell me that this possibly Russian spy whale was maybe assassinated? That's crazy. However, a necropsy, an autopsy for an animal, was performed on Hvaldimir to determine the cause of death. And it was determined that Hvaldimir was not shot after all, and that he didn't have gunshot wounds. I think some have speculated that the injuries that some thought were gunshot wounds were actually caused by seabirds after his death. I don't know. Anyways, the cause of death was a stick measuring 14 inches in length and about an inch in diameter, which became stuck in Vhaldimir's mouth, and that's what killed him. A stick? But since it's undetermined whether or not this was caused by a human or just happened naturally, the Norwegian police will not investigate the matter. All right. Hvaldimir is, or was, estimated to be around 15 years old, while belugas normally can live in the wild to over 30. Yeah, well, that sucked and was weird. I'm still a little confused about how he was killed by a stick, but I just want to move on. Let's move on to something less whale death related. A man from Sydney, Australia, had a problem with people peeing in his driveway. I guess he lived near several bars, and drunk people stopped to pee in his driveway on several occasions. His driveway does look like just like an alleyway. If you're confused about why so many people just pee in this random driveway. Anyways, the homeowner became so annoyed that he installed a motion detector, which triggers both like a light and a sort of like sprinkler system that just dumps a ton of water on people in the driveway. What I find funny is that the owner of one of the bars offered to pay to install a fence on his driveway so people couldn't get in it. But he instead opted for the pee trap, which, by the way, cost $3,000. Oh, that's probably in Australian dollars, to be fair. Who knows how much that is? But yeah, now the homeowner says he actually looks forward to people peeing in his driveway because he gets to see the pee trap in action. You have to find joy where you can, I guess. This story led me to some other anti-urination tactics that have been used in the past. There is pee paint, which is a sort of hydrophobic paint that, when applied to walls, is designed to sort of deflect the pee off the wall back onto the peer. Also, the paint is invisible when applied, so peeing on walls is always a risk that you got to take. Also, there's anti-pee architecture, which has existed for a very long time. Urine deflectors, they're also called. They've existed since the 19th century. In 19th century London, public urination was so common that brick walls on many buildings were being corroded, and so urine deflectors were installed, and which angled, urine into the gutter or onto the shoes of the peer even. From Atlas Obscura, I have a supposed 1809 quote from a miffed gentleman. Quote, "In London, a man may sometimes walk a mile before he can meet with a suitable corner, for so accommodating are the owners of doorways, passengers, and angles that they seem to have exhausted invention in the ridiculous barricades and shelves, grooves, and one fixed above another, to conduct the stream into the shoes of the luckless wight who shall dare to profane the entrenchments." Sorry. Well, let's just move on to Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia, who recently proposed a solution to Russia's low fertility rate, which is at 1.5 children per woman, well below the 2.1 children per woman at which the population is considered stable. Previous measures include free fertility checks for women, financial incentives to some parents, restricting access to abortion, and increasing divorce fees. But none of that has been sufficient. So Putin suggested that citizens should have sex during work breaks. Yeah, I guess like a lot of people in Russia, extremely overworked, working like 12 hours a day. How you're supposed to have children when you're working 12 hours a day? The Russian health minister, Dr. Shestopalov, backed up this idea. He said, quote, "Being very busy at work is not a valid reason, but a lame excuse. You can engage in procreation during breaks because life flies by too quickly." A little tip to Putin. I don't think if you're too busy at work to have children, I don't think it's the sex that's the main problem. I think it's the time that it takes to raise the children that's the main problem. Also, Putin, if you're watching, I have an even better solution to your low fertility rate problem. You could, just throwing it out there, stop the war in Ukraine that's killing young Russian men that would otherwise be starting families and has caused over 1 million Russians to emigrate away. No, you're right. Having sex during work breaks is a better solution. Yeah. Who would even have the energy to have sex during a work break? Whenever I'm taking a break at work, all I can do is sit there just like... Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, recently signed a bill into law allowing convenience stores to sell ready-to-drink cocktails, which were previously only allowed to be sold at liquor stores. I guess Pennsylvania has some of the strictest laws on alcohol in the country. But anyways, Shapiro and a few other politicians made a public appearance by going to a convenience store to buy ready-to-drink cocktails, I guess to sort of, promote all of the hard work they're doing passing alcohol laws. But anyways, Shapiro's didn't have his ID with him, so the cashier didn't let him buy any alcohol, which is funny because Shapiro is 51 years old and also the governor. The convenience store must have a policy where everybody who buys alcohol has to show ID. Otherwise, the cashier might just not like Shapiro. I don't know. But anyways, there is a picture of people standing outside, with their drinks. And then there's just Shapiro just standing there empty-handed. It's such a sad picture. Oh, poor Shapiro. Police officers in Bedford, Ohio, reported a situation involving a naughty 8-year-old girl. The police initially took a call for a missing child. And then, later, a separate call about a small child driving a car. Officers eventually found the car in the parking lot of a Target and found the 8-year-old girl inside shopping. They grow up so fast these days. I'd just like to know what that little girl wanted to buy so badly. No one was hurt, but the little girl said she ran over one mailbox. To be honest, in that moment, I'd be willing to bet she wasn't the worst driver in Ohio. An unruly airline passenger on a flight headed from Perth, Australia, to Sydney forced the plane to have to return to Perth. He was acting so poorly. This meant that the plane had to drop some of its fuel in order to land safely. It wasn't released what the passenger actually did, but I guess he was arrested once the airplane landed and charged with 1 count of disorderly behavior on an aircraft and 1 count of failure to comply with safety instructions. Anyways, this is why I bring the story up. The passenger has been ordered to pay 8,630 Australian dollars back to the airline to cover the cost of the dumped fuel, just the fuel that they had to dump, as well as an additional fine of $9,000 in an effort to hopefully dissuade other people from misbehaving. It is unusual for people to have to pay for dropped fuel in these situations, but I guess they're really cracking down. Well, I hope whatever it was he did was worth the 17,630 Australian dollars. That's not even the highest fine ever given to a misbehaving airplane traveler. In 2021, an intoxicated man who brought his own alcohol on board tried to smoke marijuana in the lavatory and sexually assaulted a flight attendant, all on a single flight, was charged with a fine of $40,823 US. You know what? Good. I'm happy. People have been getting too comfortable acting insane on airplanes recently, it feels like. So I'm just going to read the next headline. Nashville residents desperately seek help for man missing half his head walking around Broadway. So yeah, there's apparently some situation going down there in Nashville. And there are pictures of the man online. I'm not going to show them, but I have seen them. Not a fan. But yeah, there's like a 90-degree angle cut in his head. Just like literally, like most of his forehead is missing. People were arguing whether or not you could actually see his brain or if it was just his skull. Honestly, I didn't look too closely. I was feeling a little weak in the knees. There's even a picture where he's touching it. Ew. Oh, like he's touching his brain. Can I pick your brain for a second? Oh boy. Well, just a few days ago, we got an update to this story. The man is named Jonathan Johnson, and he's a homeless man that 7 years ago was in a severe car accident, which required a metal plate to be inserted into his head. Recently, I guess there was a complication where he needed the plate replaced, and it was removed, but I guess he left the hospital before they could put a new one in. We don't know why he left the hospital. It doesn't seem like necessarily the best decision. But to give him some slack, you probably aren't making the best decisions when you're missing half your head. It does seem like that maybe the man doesn't want the injury fixed, but in an interview, he said that he does want it fixed. Good. And some good Samaritans took him to a hospital where the injury was cleaned, and he's now living in a group home. He was previously sleeping outdoors on a bench, and so now hopefully he will get the plate back in. 2 men, a father and a son from Italy, recently got into some pretty hefty trouble in Sri Lanka. The two men were caught by rangers who discovered over 300 insects in jars in their cars, including 92 species of butterfly. I guess the father was an insect enthusiast, so they were using insect attractants to lure insects, trapping them in jars and using chemical agents to kill them. All of the insects found were dead. And then the two were planning on smuggling the insects out of the country. Anyways, the two were charged with illegal collection, possession, and transportation of insects, which resulted in a fine of 60 million Sri Lankan rupees, which is about 289,000 Australian dollars, which they had to pay by September 24th, or risk up to 2 years in jail. I looked for updates to see if they paid the fine or not, but I couldn't find any, so I guess that means they probably paid it. Anyways, it's the largest fine for wildlife crime the country has ever seen for capturing butterflies. That has to have been a lot of work, too. It's a lot of work to do something so illegal. Like, if you're going to do something illegal, why not do something fun, like cocaine? And longtime viewers of the channel know that I like to end Weird News Reports with a really good article, and this week is no different. A man named David Rush recently broke a world record for the most balloons punched in 60 seconds. Of course, it only counted if the balloons were popped. And the video did look pretty awesome.
3, 2, 1, go.
You can watch the whole video yourself. But anyways, apparently David Rush has the most concurrent Guinness World Record titles in the world with over 181 records, which I suppose in and of itself is another record. I don't know if that factors in to the 181 number, but good for him, I guess. What a funny hobby, setting world records. Well, that's all for this week. Thanks for watching this bad video.